Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Happy Being Well. I have an exciting guest today. She is an energy healer and coach. Her name is Jennifer Rose Brown, and she's actually been doing this for 20 years. And me and Jennifer have been talking prior to recording this podcast. And I got to tell you guys, you're in for a real treat. She truly, truly knows her stuff. She actually has interesting healing modalities where she's actually combined the healing modalities that we all have heard and known to really go really deep to release those memories of trauma and actually to recode and re-imprint new memories, and really release all of that negative energy frequency out of your body so you can start creating new thought patterns and change and transform and change your life, right? Which we all want to live in a high vibration, the vibration of love, and achieve be a better version of ourselves. And so I'm really excited for our guest today. But before we dive deep with Jennifer, this podcast is sponsored by happybeingwell.com, your online store for leggings, 100% natural facial masks, natural soaps, essential oils, aromatherapy diffusers, bath soaps, herbal teas, and much more at happybeingwell.com. Use code podcast25 for 25% off all activewear leggings. So Jennifer, welcome to the Happy Being Well podcast. So I am
Thank you.
so excited that you're going to be pouring into our audience. So you're an energy healer and coach. So what made you, and this is, you've been doing this, like it's really rare that I actually run into someone that's been doing this for as long as you have, 20 years, because I'm always, when you meet, people jumped into it a year ago, maybe like 2 years ago, or like 5 months ago, right? A lot of people are just kind of jumping into the space now. It's not 20 years ago, I wouldn't say it was that popular. So you have a really interesting background. And so tell us how you got into it and share with us some of your, healing modalities, your experiences, working with clients, how they've transformed. And like truly, like, why is this so important? Like, so some people out there that perhaps may think this is like woo-woo stuff, right? But and I definitely know that's not woo-woo. This is actually real. And if you really break it down, it's actually science-based. So take it away, Jennifer.
Oh, golly. Okay. Where do I start? So I guess like you were asking, why did I get involved? Why, it's been so long. So it's basically been my whole life. I mean, I was reading energy healing books from the age of about 14. Not that there were many of them, but I literally as a kid would spend whatever kind of pocket money I had on anything that was metaphysical, tarot cards, and I was doing energy healing just kind of to anybody that would let me try and take away their headache kind of thing since I was about 14. And then I began training professionally. I think it was about 22 years ago, and started with Reiki, trained in various countries with reflexology, trained in acupressure so that I could work I was living in London at the time. I wanted to work in doing corporate work in the city. So I was going into the big banks and hedge funds and big music companies and all this kind of thing to work on the staff. And really just this was a kind of training ground for me to see how energy was actually working, because I would notice that when I was working on people and I was supposed to be, going in there using elbows and all the rest of it and all the kind of techniques we've been trained to get into the energy system. So you're, going into the entry points. So people maybe know about the Chinese medicine, and we have the meridians that the life force energy travels through in the body, and we have all these points of kind of entry, if you like, where we'd, you know, get in there with our elbows to open up the person's energy system. And sometimes I would have, you know, just 10-15 minutes with each person, and they would come in kind of maybe Friday afternoon, grey, tired, kind of closed in, and within 10-15 minutes they were like shining, literally like bright lights, and happy and looking forward to the weekend kind of thing. And I could see how rapidly, just by getting into a person's energy system, you could like shift out the congestion. And of course, this is like a fearful state, isn't it? This state of kind of contraction and closing in oneself. So it's about opening. And then I wanted to work more with the subconscious. So I retrained about 8 years ago, 7-8 years ago, and started using more of the energy psychology tools with people, working on Zoom. And then I could begin working with the limiting beliefs, and, you know, working still on the kind of repressed trauma, memories, and the heavy energies that get compacted within our systems, to be able to clear those out for people, so that, you know, the vibration naturally rises, the depression naturally leaves, the heavy, you know, the heavy dense energies of the guilt and the shame and all this kind of thing, moving up the emotional scale to anger, then acceptance, and then into the higher frequencies of, you know, acceptance and peace, love, joy, appreciation. So yeah, so that's kind of what I'm really, really passionate about, because I don't know that many people are talking about this, or really kind of explaining how all these kind of things kind of fit together when you're talking about energy, and when you're talking about raising your vibration and working. I like to work with the higher frequencies. I like to use my voice. I like to work with colors, anything that creates really beautiful frequencies within the session, so that the energy changes, the information that's held in the person's energy field can change from, you know, a fear response that was maybe due to a traumatic memory in the past, and, you know, decision was made, a limiting belief was formed as the brain's kind of protective mechanism that this should never happen again. So it's not safe to make money, or it's not safe to fall in love again, or however it's, you know, kind of manifested in the person's life. And to let people know that we're literally electromagnetic systems, we're information fields, and when you go in there and change the information, then your life changes. So it's working with the inner technology to therefore, you know, be able to shape the kind of life and the kind of experience that you want to have, and the joy and the happiness, and all of that is naturally what we are within us. The divine light that we are is not a soundbite or a concept. It's something that I like to help people experience for themselves. And so when we you know, kind of dig out the weeds and get through that concrete, these protective, you can call it the false personality, you can call it the wounded ego, you can call it, to me, like I see it, it's like, it's just like a suit of armor. It's literally like the cement. And I don't think that it would be wrong to say that what we're seeing in the world now, people's separation from nature, from themselves, all the concrete, this, you know, the cities and everything being kind of concreted up, is literally what's going on inside. So when I go inside and I see like I watch what's going on when I do the inner work. It's concrete. It's literally like we have these heart walls, we have this concrete that we've separated from our real selves, protective coping mechanisms. And I guess what I do is to very, very safely and very lovingly and very gently to, you know, be washing away, cleaning and clearing, and kind of alchemizing these very painful energies that cause a lot of sickness and distortions in mind, perceptions, to rebalance and clear and clean so that we go back to our essential nature. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. It totally makes sense. And especially, you know, living in the big cities, home is kind of like the haven away from the chaos running outside, right? It's basically overpopulated, and you have a whole eclectic of people, especially with, you know, a lot of workplaces today. You know, workplace abuse, toxic work culture is on the rise. And, you know, even when people are working from home, you're not going to escape the workplace bully or the workplace abuse, because, you know, they can still call you, they could still, you know, email you, text you, and perform whatever gaslighting or whatever bullying they were doing in person, you know, still through the virtual, right? It's not going to stop, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, of course, well, actually, kind of is worse, because now it's like when you would go home, at least that was a place of like where you weren't exposed to those toxic factors, right? That the work, especially, I would say a lot of it's a workplace, because most I was going to say the word North Americans, but you're in the UK. Most people all over the world work in a corporate job, right? So now with the rise of virtual, which I think is great that more people get to work virtually at home in the comfort of their home, but if they're a part of a toxic workplace culture, then that's going to, you know, carry over in through their laptops, through their phones. So, you know, so I can see how people are kind of having those walls up, you know, especially with everything going on. Everyone's been more triggered, their traumas have been all triggered more intensely. That's caused the division, you know, political divisions and whatever other divisions. You know, and the truth of the matter is, we really don't no one really knows, you know, what's really going on behind closed political doors or whatever. So there's really no point in, anyways, but you know, it's, yeah, we're seeing everybody go through a trauma as the members of society. So we are seeing these defense mechanisms increase, and more division, more fear, creating this today more than ever before. So I would say, you know, working with a person like you, doing the work is probably more important than ever before, especially given the times we're living in order to not get sucked in to, you know, more fear and getting triggered due to whatever you hold in your personal past history. You know, you're just going to be more and more triggered than ever before. And it's a whole soup of chaos, right? And confusion. And
I think something, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think something that, okay, so first thing I want to say is there's an awful lot of people that might be listening to this that are feeling very isolated, and that there's something wrong with them. and they're getting triggered like never before, and there's maybe terror and panic running through their body, or they might be having panic attacks, or maybe they're just, you know, negative thoughts, feelings, whatever the situation is, whether there's the divisions with you and your family, or you know, within your workplace. Maybe you feel, I don't know, maybe you have a narcissistic boss, maybe you have family dynamics that are really difficult for you, maybe you're the ultra sensitive one, like whatever is, you know, showing up in your life. I want to offer an idea of what I feel is happening energetically on the planet, and it might make you feel less alone. It might help you to kind of get through what's happening, because the way I kind of see it is that we've had all this, you know, compacted trauma. There's guilt, and there's shame, and there's repressed anger. There's all this stuff that we couldn't express. There's all this stuff that we had to just, you know, pull ourselves up with the bootstraps and get through it, or we needed to go to work the next day, so we had to just, you know, suppress. Like, we have so much suppression of our, you know, thoughts, feelings, emotions, especially like when I used to live in London. I could see, I mean, obviously I worked in the corporate as a healer, but you can just, the corporate paradigm in itself is, for me, very dehumanizing, because you're not really allowed to express what you really think and how you're really feeling. It's just all about, you know, towing the line, or being the leader, or however, whatever your role is, it's not necessarily in alignment with how you're actually feeling as a vulnerable human being. So I think that all this kind of compacted, repressed energy is something that is literally being purged on a global scale at the moment. And I think that this is the awakening time. I was hearing the whispers many years ago that I was in training for this time, and I didn't really understand for what's going to happen. And the spiritual teachers have been telling us for a really long time. And, you know, we had the 2012 thing, which was the end of the Mayan calendar, and people were saying this is, you know, at least a milestone in the awakening process, or this is an awakening, and it's kind of like a great purge. And with natural healing, instead of shoving something down or taking a pill to, you know, stop the pain, it's literally coming up and out. And I feel as if all this, you know, panic that you're maybe feeling in your body, that was kind of always there, but you were just managing to keep your head above water, or how things are manifesting with the duality, with the kind of, you know, the binary, I'm for this, I'm against that, and people fighting because they want to hold on to their particular belief. I think it's all essentially about the powerlessness that is kind of very deep seated into the human psyche and the nervous system and our physiology, for multiple reasons. And I hope this is I hope this is making sense. So what I'm trying to say is, you know, anybody that is suffering out there, you're not alone. It's a global thing. It's part of this awakening. It's part of this grand healing, if you like. All the undesirable stuff is going to come up in one way or another, just as the body will naturally expel from the body through vomiting or through sweating, or whatever way the expellation takes place in order to rid itself of its toxins. And that's happening on a grand scale. So I think that now you're right. We need to do the inner work. We need to heal. We want to create this new life for everybody. We see this new paradigm that some people are talking about, a world of natural cooperation, natural healing, cooperation amongst people, and love and joy and kindness and community. And then we see the old paradigm that has not been working in our favor, and the corruption and the darkness and the shadow, and all this is coming up to be revealed. It's coming up to be seen. And I think that we have to have a lot more compassion. I think compassion, self-love, and compassion and acceptance of my belief, of your belief, of the realization that we're all coming from all these different perceptions and perspectives based on our own experience, based on the energies that are running through us and the information that's within our individual fields. And so the lens that we look through and how we see the world, that it's not just a black and white, right and wrong. They're right and I'm wrong, or vice versa. Self-blame or blaming other people. It's really about perception, and it's about what we've lived and what trauma we've experienced, and therefore how we're showing up in our, bless you, how we're showing up. So I think that part of this new paradigm that we're wanting to create and build, the pathway to getting there is to really, clear out the old programming. We know that 95% of our behavior and the reality we're creating is based on our subconscious programming. And our programming is full of limitations of what we can and can't do, what we're allowed, what we deserve, what we're worthy of, what we got into trouble for. And most of it is up until the age of 7, when our brains were in theta brainwave state as kids, and we were sponges, and we absorbed all this information from the outside and our parents' beliefs, which they absorbed from their parents, from the Great Depression and then through the lineage. And there's so much information and so much stuff that's old and broken and not working. And it's literally like clogging up our systems. So our job now is to clear it up, clear the planet up, clear the, the internal up, and heal. And self-love is a huge key to not only having the best life we can lead, but for creating this new world, this new paradigm that we're wanting to create now.
Yeah, brilliant points. It's funny because, when the pandemic first started and there was a global phenomenon of everybody stocking up on toilet paper, I straight away made a joke of like, maybe that's the collective unconsciousness wanting to clean up all the shit now from that we've created, throughout all of these years, right?
Yeah.
However, at the same time, it was mentioned that a lot of politicians throughout were mentioning prior to lockdowns, like this, when it first started, to get your toilet paper, get your pasta. They mentioned certain items that people actually stocked up on. So, so anyways, but it's still funny with the toilet paper. I always say, well, it was kind of like a symbolic, of what we're kind of going through. And so to kind of, sum up what you're trying to explain with people, fighting and the division, pushing their beliefs, their perspective onto others. No, jump on my bandwagon. No, jump on my bandwagon. Right? It stems from a root of wanting like control. Like I think most human beings want control. It makes them feel safe, and the more intense trauma you've experienced, like the more abuse you've endured, the more more control you want. So typically we see this in people that have antisocial personality disorders, and typically most of them typically are a result of abuse, like a trauma childhood abuse. So they tend to be very sophisticated manipulators because it gives them a sense of control, which makes them feel safe. And most people, whether or not they've experienced intense trauma or not, to a certain level or a certain degree, do like to feel and have a sense of control, and on different levels, different degrees, to make them feel safe. So I think that what happened globally in the past 2 years now is that it's taken away that feeling of whatever control they typically had. Whether it was like, oh, I'm going to work at a particular time physically, or that routine was shaken up, that knowing of what your day was going to look like and going through the motions and the routine, like it had a sense of safety and security because it was something that you're doing, it's familiar. Then all of a sudden it's dramatic, like lockdowns, restrictions, social isolation, not really knowing when this pandemic is going. I mean, it's kind of still going on, the pandemic. I know restrictions are being lifted, but then there's talks of another wave might be coming down the pipe. There's still this sense of uncertainty, and it creates this real feeling of no control in terms of what your external world is going to look like or be, or having that sense of like knowing, you know. So I think that was really what really probably stemmed a lot of the need for control, that sense of control in people.
Yeah, and the control system's in all of us. So it's like you said, it's more pronounced. There's a greater need for control if somebody's had, a lot of childhood trauma, and it's that safety mechanism. It's if I have control, then I'll be safe. So it's understandable. But I think that something that can kind of curb the sentiment of us against them and I'm right and you're wrong kind of thing is that this control system is in all of us, and there's hate in all of us, and there's jealousy in all of us, and there's, to varying degrees. This is all, we're really not that separate from each other. So speaking of, I guess, on a more kind of looking at things on a more spiritual basis and more kind of holographic. So we are one piece of the totality of, the human experience. We're one spark of the kind of divine, the whole, because if everything is energy, then everything is, waveforms of energy. We're not really separate from the greater whole. We're simply looking through our own individual lens, because the paradox is that we are part of the whole, and we're having this separate experience through the ego of the individual identity in this human experience that we're having. So it's kind of both. I don't know what else I want to say about that. I kind of wanted to say more about the self-love, because I think that, talking about the control that's kind of out there and that's within us, I feel as if the journey that we're kind of, certainly the path that I'm walking and the path that I've been walking towards and moving towards, I guess, my whole life, is the embodiment of the higher aspect, to kind of bridge our soul, our spirit, our divine aspect or self with the human. So we're literally both, but I think the more that we can align ourselves with the frequencies of the divine self, meaning the joy, the love, the acceptance of ourselves and therefore others, appreciation. These are the this is the stairway to the enlightenment that a lot of us are hoping to kind of embody in this lifetime. But I think it's also it's our gateway to freedom. It's the freedom that we're looking for. But it is an inner job. It is an inner job in order to have that freedom, and happiness is from within, and the joy when you feel into your spirit, and that joy, that beautiful, sparkly, loving lightness that we want. That's what we're, this is the key. This is the, yeah, this is the gateway, I think, to what the kind of life that we want to experience and the kind of being that we want to experience while we're here. And I think this is the new paradigm that I was talking about earlier. Yeah, so it starts with the self-acceptance. It starts with the energies, the frequencies of acceptance and compassion and love. So when I'm working with clients, and we're working one-to-one, yes, I'm going to be using energy psychology techniques, and I'm going to be getting into the, the energy system. We're going to start changing limiting beliefs and everything else, but it really comes in tandem with the working with the energy of the heart and the self-compassion, because it's very much in alignment with the inner child work. We're working with the parts that believe they're broken, or not enough, or just kind of scared to come out, scared to stop hiding, entrepreneurs, that coaches, that and healers actually, that want to put their work out into the world, and they're scared of being, people are scared of being attacked, or they're the limiting beliefs that they can't make money, or they'll never make money if they do what they love, so they have to follow some outer prescribed formula of what everybody else is doing. I mean, I see this so much in the coaching arena. It needs to be done this way or you won't be able to make money. And there's this kind of tug of war between the heart and the mind. And the mind, of course, is full of, the fear stories and the regret of the past and the fear of the future and the mind loops. And just like, for me personally, it was like, I can't make decisions from that anymore. I just can't. I get nowhere with it. It's like this, the mind loop, which is the, it's not just about the limitations of the mind, but if there's, so much distortion energy kind of clogging up the system, then it's literally this wobble that is distorting the clear thinking channels and the access to a more expansive, you could say, information from the higher self, or if you don't want to put it in such terms, you could just say, an expanded way of thinking, the creativity that allows us to think beyond the box. All of this is really important now that people, I think, do the inner work in order to have that self-love and self-compassion and start accepting even the aspects of themselves that they, like the shadow work that you mentioned earlier when we were chatting, to be able to look at the parts of yourself that you really don't like and you want to hide from everybody else and you don't want to admit to yourself, and to depending on what you need to work on, work with a practitioner. So I love working with people on the parts that they're really ashamed of themselves about. And obviously I have to hold a really loving, compassionate space, very sacred space, in order for people to feel safe enough to do that. Because if you don't feel safe, then the healing doesn't take place. But shame survives in not having a voice and not being spoken out loud. So if I'm doing shadow work with somebody, then if they can speak their, the worst of the worst to another person out loud in session with me, and then we'll do the gentle energy processes to kind of rebalance the amygdala, neutralize the fight or flight response, the system settles down, the energy changes, the information changes, the cognitive shifts take place. We can clear out, the density of the shame and the guilt and those heavy, heavy, very depressive emotions. To actually be able to speak the shadow work out loud is so liberating, because shame can only live in silence. So it's very, very powerful to be able to get to the really, really, deep-seated fears and doubts and kind of shamings we have about ourselves. And that's how we're going to not just fill ourselves up with healthy self-love, being that wellspring of joy and goodness, that becomes the lens that becomes who we are, because that is really who we are when we get past all the kind of muck. And that of course becomes our world, because the world is how we are viewing it, through our perceptions, through our individual lenses, based on who we are and what information we're carrying about the world, what we believe about the world, what the subconscious is saying about the world, and other people and ourselves. So it's like a kind of win-win-win. When you have the acceptance and the compassion for yourself, you clear away what's not you, then that loving heart can feel safe to open to other people. So when you were talking earlier about, bullies in the workplace and this kind of thing, and toxic behavior that you can see on social media, and we kind of become a little bit bulletproof to any bullying when we come into our true selves, beyond those coping mechanisms and beyond the armor of the kind of false beliefs and the heavy energies, the hopelessness and the helplessness. When we clear that out, and you've really just got this kind of shining diamond of who you are, you're a little bit bulletproof to the narcissist and everything, because they can't play the game with you. There's nothing for it to kind of attach to. An abuser can smell someone who's been abused a mile off. So they talk about, Jeffrey Epstein, a lot of the girls that ended up being part of his sex trafficking organization, they had been abused. A lot of those girls had already experienced sexual abuse, and I heard in interviews some of the women saying it was kind of like a magnet. It's like he could, the predator can sniff out its prey. It's a bit like that. It's like we can have these magnets within us if we've experienced, sexual abuse, childhood trauma, bullying, this kind of thing, and magnetizing the predator towards us. It's like, I kind of see it like kind of negative magnets. And when we clear up our own woundedness, and as a result become more aligned with who we actually are and who we think we are and what we are, and that's our strength and that's our solidity and our security and integrity, then the games don't work and the bully can't diminish, because you know who you are and your cup is already full and it's overflowing, and it's a goodness that allows your heart to open, because it's like a kind of natural protective mechanism, I would say. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that absolutely makes sense, because when the narc throws out bait or a dagger, you know truth, you know your truth, you know their truth, you know where that's coming from. So you're going to be more grounded in truth, where it's not going to trigger you, it's not going to affect you, you're not going to respond with anger, because it's like a little child. You know, you start to see the narcissist as this little child going, "Oh, you're no good, you're no good." You know, you start to see them in this childlike way, because they are just, you know, they're being so silly because they're just so insecure, and you see that they're trying to get you to be more insecure so they can feel more power over you and sense of dominance and control, again, to make them feel safe and more superior, and you know, and heighten their ego. Like, it's all about ego for them, and a game. You know, it's a game of winners and losers. Whoever they come into contact with, it's always a game of winners and losers, and they always want to be the winner in any shape or form. So once you're able to recognize that and do the work and then release all that, it's not going to affect you. And then after, you get better at communicating with them. And actually, I'm speaking at a summit, a workplace abuse summit, and a part of my talk is, you know, just throw it back on them, like whatever judgment they're throwing at you, just say, well, what's wrong with that? Just completely stand in your conviction, stand in your truth, because they're trying to plant seeds of doubt and confusion in you, so that then they can control you through that confusion.
Domination.
Yeah. And then see you squirm, and they're just loving it. It's giving them more energy, because they feel like, look how much control and power I have over this individual, and it just fills them up. So once you really recognize the truth of it, you're not going to actually feed into them, to that response that they want, that they want to trigger. So you become more stronger. So absolutely. But it also starts with perception, and I'm starting to see, you know, before anyone starts to decide to do the work or, you know, take it seriously, I think this is the reason why most people don't take this stuff seriously. You know, all these healing modalities that we're speaking about, or especially energy work or Reiki or anything like this, it's because mainstream culture and mainstream society, you know, the program of that, which is go to school, get good grades, go to university, get your degrees, get a good job, get married, you know, make your investments, have the big house, have the nice cars. Like, you're just so preoccupied with, you know, going through those motions and that program. And in that part of that programming, there's no talk of like meditating and, you know, energy transference. There's no talk of, you know, energy flows or key energy or meridians or anything of that nature, or energy exchanges between people, or anything like, or vibrations, you know, low vibration, high vibration. Like, there's no mention of that in our mainstream culture. And mainstream culture keeps us extremely busy. If you're not working, if you're not cooking, if you're not shopping, if you're not taking the kids back and forth to soccer, well, you got to go update your license plate stickers. Oh, you have to do your taxes, or you got to do, I mean, it's designed, we're constantly having to do something, you know. So we're just,
I've never lived that life, and I think that's probably why I've literally, I always made it my number one priority, the spiritual awakening and the energy healing, even though I would be like, why why am I still doing this? Why am I so obsessed with this? Why do I keep studying with this person and this and these energy healers and flying here to go train with them? And it's literally been like so many years of it and never living a conventional life. Like I've lived in, I think, over a dozen countries now. I've always lived all over the world, and I was like a little gypsy from a really early age, I guess. So I never had that, that conventional, yes, I went to university and, got a master's, but aside from that, yeah, I just,
There's nothing wrong with, I mean, I actually am for education because, you know, because I've learned critical thinking through going through
mm,
the education system, right? University, especially, right? Because there's a lot of, because it actually does promote, what's your take on, like, it does promote critical thinking. You are exercising those critical thinking, independent thinking um, muscles, right? So does, there is there is value in that. I'm just saying, like, I think we're both saying the same thing. I'm just saying, like, what we're being exposed to as ways of thinking. I mean, it's never really discussed in our mainstream. It's just you know, status and material symbolism of status and stuff like this. Oh, I'll be happy when I have that, 5,000 square foot home, and oh, I've got, particular whatever it is, the kitchen or whatever, um, because these are images that are being flashed, in society
yeah,
through the social media and mainstream TV and all these things, right? So I'm just trying to say, like, the mainstream perception, and that's another point I was actually recently being recognizing, which is really interesting. I just feel like we still have some work to go, but recently I've been on social media, these social media, like particularly YouTube. Um, People are now grabbing old shows from mainstream media, like, for example, America's Next Top Model. And that
mm-hmm.
show ended in 2018. It ran from, I think it started in 2011 to 2018. And Tyra Banks was the host of that show. So it's just really funny. I was, I believe, during that show, I watched snippets of the show, during its run, especially in its, like, in the beginning of the heyday. I never
I
actually,
used to watch it.
yeah, I never was a regular, like, I never was like, oh my God, I gotta watch America. I've seen
Yeah,
episodes,
yeah,
but it's interesting that people are now taking, because it's no longer running. I mean, they may show reruns, but um, taking it, and now people are starting to recognize the extreme abuse, mental and emotional abuse of what the show was doing to the contestants, like literally torture,
wow,
right? Um, and it's being discussed now on YouTube with these YouTube influencers on their podcasts and YouTube shows and stuff, and people are pulling clips and, like, really dissecting the ugliness of the show and what they purposely
mm,
do to contestant. They actually ruined some contestants' lives, like, they were no longer able to go back into modeling anymore because the agencies would deny them after watching the show or what have you. Actually, some of these contestants are actually coming out now and speaking about
really?
that. So it's interesting because it's like, well, it's interesting because it was like people are now seeing it. But during the
Mm,
run, we just watched it. We didn't say anything. We weren't able to even recognize the mental and emotional abuse being done on these poor contestants. But now we recognize it. So I'm seeing, like, there is an awakening happening. I mean, I still think, we still have some ways to go before we reach the mass collective, but it is growing. Spark has been, lit, because I am seeing evidence of it now on social media. People are now talking about these toxic behaviors. But it's interesting, like, I guess in the 90s or early 2000s, we were literally, like, we just were not able to recognize it. We really didn't. We just kind of like, okay, like this is something that, you know, was, I guess you could say, going through the motions, you know. We did not recognize it. We did not talk about it, but now we are. So it's a good
I think it's interesting that you're talking about this with regards to a television show as well, because it's like you don't call like a TV program a program for nothing. It's like the work I do is about reprogramming the, you know, the subconscious mind, which is the driver of your perception and your behavior and the way you create your reality. I mean, ultimately that's literally the driver of your life, is the programs in your subconscious mind. So when you're looking at these kind of television shows, they're programs. I mean, we've been programmed, we've been in this, you know, mass trance of whatever messaging the media chose to feed us. And as consumers, you consume that information. That's why, you know, I think it's really important to be very, very careful of and aware of what you're consuming. What information are you bringing into your field? Because our energy fields, our auras are, you know, they're permeable. So you take energy from other people. People, you know, toxic people may project their own stuff onto you, and do you take it in? Do you, you know, what are you taking in? What energy are you taking in? And what media are you consuming? I think people are getting really quite savvy with this now. You know, what are you taking into your body? You know, you want good nutritional content and fresh foods, etc. But what are you taking into your energy field? What people are you taking into your space, your environment? And yeah, what media are you? A lot of people are switching off the news now, not watching a lot of the really toxic, negative content. Obviously, when there's something, you know, at the moment going on, like the war in Ukraine, then you want to know what is going on. And I think, if anything, it's serving to open people's hearts to the ordinary people that are, I mean, it's just heartbreaking. I think what's really beautiful is just the amount of support from all over the world, from everywhere, with people literally just saying, this isn't acceptable anymore. War is not acceptable. It's not acceptable. And if you can talk about anything good coming out of a situation like this, then I think that out of the very tragic things that happen in life, we can say that it can open people's hearts. I feel as if what's happening at the moment globally as part of this awakening that I'm talking about is that I remember my old shamanic teachers used to say to me, the purpose in life is for people to open their hearts. We've been so wounded, and we've got so many walls and blockages and, all this kind of protection because we don't want to get hurt. I think that it's really about opening our hearts, and we can really safely do that when we're strong in our own integrity and knowing who and what we are.
Absolutely.
And I think that's maybe why you're seeing the toxicity of certain shows and everything else, is people are starting to kind of wake up and be like, that's not healthy, that's not loving, that's not kind. And there's been I mean, I'm sure you have, like, you've noticed for like years and years, a lot of the reality shows. Certainly, I don't usually watch. I don't watch television, but just seeing bits about the reality shows in Britain, like over these years, and the kind of a breeding of a really toxic unkindness, cruelty, competition, superficiality. I really feel like all that stuff has had its day, and I'm just really ready to move into a world where we learn to be kind to ourselves so that we can be kind to each other. And I think kindness has to, the real important values have to be expressed now within every aspect of life, for corporations to look at kindness, respect, integrity, decency, generosity. I mean, I feel as if anything that's really not going to be in alignment with these core values really is, I hope, naturally going to kind of collapse and fall by the wayside, because these higher frequency energies that are available um, not just kind of charge us up as individuals, but literally I feel as if it's just in connection with the healing of the earth, and the all to do with the earth's magnetic frequencies and our own personal magnetic frequencies. Then I feel as if these higher frequencies really don't support that old egoic garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, the wounded ego, war, competition, profit over people, the same old stuff. It's got to, I pray, I hope, I feel it's hopefully on its last legs.
Yeah, it's interesting. We shall see what happens, but at the end, it's interesting. It's interesting, like, if we really were to take a deep dive into it too, it's like this has all been spanning from, you know, we really break it down, um, profits from a business too, but there's always a fine line with it too, right? Because it's like we have competition, it's supposed to be healthy competition, to spur efficiency. But I think
Well,
it's
the competition is part of the kind of Darwinian survival of the fittest. Like, if you look at the work of, do you know Greg Braden?
yes. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, he talks about this is like the old operating system of, the dog eat dog, rat race, competition. That's this kind of old operating system that has got us where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have, again, the natural way of being, and the natural ecology of, all systems of, plants and creatures and whatnot, the natural order kind of working together, cooperation as being the more natural and actually more effective system to the old competition kind of idea. I think that the coming together and working together, two pairs of hands are better than one. Kind of working with each other can be a much more prosperous game than this old kind of competitive thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I think the whole, like, I think it's complex from my perspective, because
Yeah.
we're to look at nature, there is competition in nature, right? Certain animals eat other animals for survival. Certain insects even camouflage themselves at times to bait their prey and then, eat them. It's actually really interesting when you do study, when you take a deep dive into nature. Um, I just think that when humans, really take it to a place of downright torture in terms of the mental and emotional torture of another human, just for their own amusement or sense of, just to get that sense of control and dominance, to feed their ego for that sole purpose. That is when it's just completely crossed a line, right?
Mm,
It's not,
mhm,
no, that's just literally the dark side. That is just,
mhm.
you know, um, that is
And
that.
it's very, very hard for, it's very, very hard for really kind of sweet natured, kind of innocent, caring people to believe that that even happens. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes.
I'm thinking back to, I used to always get told by people, oh, you're really naive, you're really gullible, you're really innocent. Because if somebody said something to me, I would just believe them because they said it. I was like ridiculously honest myself and couldn't get my head round that other people might deliberately have malicious intentions towards you or deliberately try and hurt you. Or I got burned so many times, always kind of getting told kind of, oh, you're a bit naive again, kind of thing. And I mean, I had quite a lot of hard knocks and everything to, I've obviously, been out in the world, met a lot of people in my life, lived all over, and had some amazing adventures and experiences. And so you get to meet a lot of different personality types and everything else. And I just feel like if if you're really if you're a decent person, it can be difficult to even believe that some people are really quite evil or nasty, you know?
Yeah, we live in a duality and we have good and bad in our world, and just like we have light and dark and hot water and cold water, right? We have these two forces. Um, and I just look at it as that the dark force is a catalyst to make the good force stronger, right? Once we go through this dark, because after, we do recognize, we have to, because this dark force really is what is it creating? It's just creating destruction, chaos, confusion. Um,
Mm,
there's no order. I mean, eventually it can transmute to order because we recognize that this is not the way. It's serving as a catalyst for higher learning to strengthen and recognize the power of the good force, right? So that's how I see it. I see that the dark is a catalyst to create more light through that learning process. Um, and yeah, so that's how I see it, that eventually, it's going to be more and more transmuted into light. Um, so yeah,
and I
and
think that's about the opening as well, because the if we're talking about somebody that's, like we were saying about narcissists, people that are really toxic, people that are really damaged and they're power hungry and everything else, and they want victims, they want others to feel powerless so their ego can be fueled and fill up the emptiness, kind of thing. But that level of kind of damage is like, that's a closed heart. I mean, that's like that's all, the energy is not going to the heart and the altruism. Is going direct to the figuring out manipulation and pathological lying and all this sort of destructive stuff. But that kind of shut that separation from the person's own goodness, their soul, their spirit, their heart. It's like in our own systems, like when I'm kind of going inside and working on kind of opening up all the doors, all the kind of shutdowns, and the areas of contraction and fear, and energetically opening these places back up, and then the natural life force is like flooding through the area again. It's like a process of opening. And so that's why I kind of like to talk about like the opening of the heart as being so important at this time, because all the energy's been kind of running up here in the in the mind, and all the craziness of what's all the different voices and all the different I'm right and you're wrongs and everything else is literally like the conflict that's been going on inside of us, with sort of, I see it like faulty wiring. Like for me, it's kind of like being an electrician and going in and clearing out the garbage and kind of rewiring the house so the lights work, and the lights switch on, and then we have access to greater problem solving abilities, the frontal lobe, or the creativity, the life force energy, the higher vibrations, so we can make more positive choices and feel better. And when you change the energy around yourself and around your environment, then it obviously has a huge knock-on effect with the rest of the collective, because I don't feel as if we are separate. I feel as if when you're doing the work on yourself, you're doing the work for the whole, in whatever way that is.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
even
Yeah, no, I
sorry.
think that I'm not saying that, let's just say the narcissist, I'm not saying that they will change, but the experience of that to a person that's that does not contain narcissistic personality disorder or any type of antisocial personality disorder, um, that's going to teach them the power of being empathetic and compassionate and not being ruled by ego. Because when you do experience a person like this, you do see, especially if you are close to them, if you're intimate with them on a personal relationship, behind closed doors, you do see these people are not happy. They typically are very
Yep.
miserable. They can't produce their own energy. They can't even produce their own creative energy themselves. They have to constantly take from others in terms of, um, producing some type of highly competitive relationship with a particular individual because they're feeding off their energy in order to get motivated themselves. They can't motivate themselves, right? There's a lot, you see this and it's like, okay, why would you choose to be that? So when you have the ability, you don't have this disorder, because unfortunately we as people practitioners know, when you have the disorder, I think it's like a 1% chance of actually being able to change, because they're so hardwired, um, just due to the mind developing during an early period of time. And it kind of it's very difficult to change that particular mode of operation, um, because anything that you throw at it, they just see it as a game. Like, no, you're not gonna, they literally see it all as a game. If you do even try to enlighten them, they still see that as a game to try to weaken them. They see, unfortunately. So anyhow, but to the rest of society, um, it's a catalyst for us to strengthen our muscles of empathy, compassion, living more in the body, choosing more of a collaborative energy as opposed to this energy of like attacking the individual in order to feel, I don't know, a sense of superiority or validation or worth. Um, will, so that's what I meant. And we are seeing that, we are, like I mentioned, with the America's Next Top Model being blasted now on social media.
Mm.
And this is just a recent phenomenon. So I can't, I think it started like maybe last year, people were starting to blast it, but so we are seeing this now. That's what I meant. I didn't mean like the actual person that actually is fueled by this dark energy. But once the masses kind of, more collaborate towards that energy, let's just take Darwinism as for an example. Once the masses do, then these particular individuals won't be able to survive because they won't be able to feed off energy anymore.
Well, the predator can only be a predator if there's prey and victims. So a lot of the work that I do is about helping to self-identify. We can work with the, the energies and the limiting beliefs and the, the mindset work, but the self-identification is quite an important piece. And when I look at people that have suffered from, for example, narcissistic abuse, in the family home, maybe the scapegoat, the person that was kind of the emotional punch bag of the narcissist, for example, and the level of, cognitive dissonance and the self-doubt that the person then has through, if they have like PTSD or complex PTSD from that kind of childhood, and not having a strong knowing of, who they are or whether they can even trust themselves. Because if you've had a childhood where you were invalidated for everything that you said, felt, believed, you were invalidated and you were told that you were wrong or that there was something wrong with you, or the kind of the shadow energy, if you like, of the family got kind of put onto you, you became like the problem. Then people come out of that with a very, very tenuous sense of self-belief and what they can achieve in the world or who they are, and a very strong feeling of being victimized, and being fearful of another attack, hiding, being, entrepreneurs that I work with that are scared to put themselves out there, or this kind of thing manifests in so many different ways, or people that they're not making the money they want because there's a real deep you don't deserve it, you're not worthy, that was ingrained into them by the abuser or the narcissist in childhood, in order for them to have the power. And the child suffered from the emotional abuse, so that can be really, the victim can be really, really ingrained into the person's feelings of who they are and what they're capable of having. They don't feel strong, they do feel weak. Their nervous system is, there's a lot of misinformation in there about who they are. They don't feel like a powerful being that can create their own life reality. And even if you look at a lot of the stuff, a lot of the support that's out there with narcissism, I feel as if a lot of it can kind of keep someone in a place of feeling like a victim, and like that's my kind of label for the rest of my life. I think it's important to understand, if you were a victim in your childhood and you were victimized by whoever the adult was, to understand what happened to you, to understand why you maybe are afraid of making decisions, and don't trust yourself and don't trust other people, and maybe attract abusers, that kind of thing, or can't find the right romantic relationship because you always meet the same kind of emotionally unavailable guy. However it manifests, I think it's important to, once you understand what happened, to then rebuild yourself, and identify with a you that isn't a victim. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm, absolutely. And I've just looked at the time and I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, I didn't even realize that we've been talking for, I don't even know, definitely over, I think it was definitely over an hour. Like I was just like listening to everything you had to say and it was so interesting. And I just got totally caught up in the conversation. Wow. So this is probably the longest podcast episode Happy I've ever had, which has been phenomenal. So much information. And so if someone wants to work with you, Jennifer, where can they find you and where can they stay in contact with you, stay in touch with you, read more of your content?
Well, they can go to my website. So if you go to, it's just my name. So it's www.jenniferrosebrown.com. Rose as in the flower, brown color, Jennifer Rose Brown. Instagram's the same, just my name. YouTube channel, same, Jennifer Rose Brown. As far as working with me, I like to work one-to-one with people because I do energy healing and energy psychology techniques depending on what the person needs. We do various things in the coaching session. So I work on Zoom. And I tend to, I've worked with people for obviously a variety of ways that they want to heal their life and improve things on the outside. But I've kind of created 3 specific programs that are kind of my favorite things, I guess, to work with people. So you'll see on my website, you can work with me on self-love and personal beauty, which all the work I do is about changing the limiting beliefs so that your subconscious is on board with what you actually want to create, and then things are just created organically and naturally, and you're not fighting, struggling with your kind of inner programs, and then all the self-sabotage and I can't believe that happened again, or it's just the imprints keep repeating, same kind of situations. So I like to get in there and change the programming for people. A lot of emotional healing, working with the heart. I tend to, because I can kind of channel the more high frequency energies. I can often get people into having higher consciousness experiences so they can actually experience, rather than thinking about, I want to align with my soul and I want to connect with my spirit, but to actually have the experience that you are that. So I use a combination of things just to sort of bring people up into the higher frequencies and clear and clean a lot of the kind of distortions and the heavy energies that are within their systems. Self-love and personal beauty is a big favorite of mine, because I think the self-love is the key. It's the foundation to everything, to a happy life, but to more money and finding the right partner and everything else. I love working with people on clearing the blocks that have kept them single and finding the right person for them. And money, I love working on the money piece. I'm very passionate about what's going on in the world with the financial system, the monetary system, and helping people to free themselves from the old paradigm and the old scarcity beliefs. And yeah, we've got some very exciting things happening in the areas of money in the world with cryptocurrency, and there's opportunities that weren't there a number of years ago. So I don't financially advise with it, but I do have a money program because I'm working with the energies and I'm working with the limiting beliefs and the subconscious so that we can clear the old programming, and then, you know, people can make more money and enjoy their money, have more time, just basically create a life that they want to create in whatever, you know, shape that kind of takes. So yeah, go to my website, go to my Instagram or YouTube channel, and I think that's
So on
about
YouTube,
it.
what's your YouTube channel? What's your YouTube channel called?
Jennifer Rose Brown, very simple.
Okay. Well, all the audio listeners, all her links will be posted on the podcast description. So you can either copy and paste it or click on it, and you'll be taken to Jennifer's website and her Instagram and her YouTube channel. So thank you so much, Jennifer. And anyone who wants to, you know, looking for a practitioner, I highly recommend Jennifer. She really knows her stuff. And it's really rare, you know, to come across somebody that has as much advanced knowledge as you do, because you've been working in the field for 20 years. So you clearly like know your stuff. And I just got completely sucked in with the podcast myself, listening to you. I totally didn't even realize how much time went by. Typically, the episodes are like 45 minutes when I have a guest on, but I just completely lost track of time. I just got totally sucked into the conversation. It was an interesting conversation.
I'm so passionate about all this. I love getting the chance to talk about it, and it's so lovely to meet you. The chat we had before we recorded as well. It's lovely to meet you and get the chance to talk to you, and also obviously to give your audience some information that I hope really helps them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And you know, you really did a deep dive. And it's been a real treat for the audience for me to go into that, you know, have a conversation with somebody at an advanced level to discuss, you know, basically transformation. And especially in today's day and age when there's so much negative energy, you know, filled around, you know, everywhere. And so we really need to develop those muscles and purge out limiting beliefs and traumas.
And there's to let people know that there are tools and techniques that will help you sort of moment to moment when things come up, when you get triggered, so that the triggering can be an opportunity. For example, maybe you know, if I have a trigger, I'll be doing EFT on myself, and I'll go real sort of deep dive into, you know, where it is located in my body, and then keep working with that and shifting. And people can use these techniques to just help themselves day to day. There's a lot of help that's available. There's a lot of tools in the kind of energy medicine toolkit that will help people to shift whatever is coming up for them, so that they can go into a deeper level of kind of being. And so when you do get triggered, it's like, oh, it's another opportunity to heal something that was wounded within you. And it can be an empowering thing, instead of, oh no, you know, why am I not perfect yet? There's, you know, there's something wrong with me, kind of the core belief thing. So there are so many different tools and things that people can use to empower themselves, and I don't know how people get by without the kind of tools and techniques that I use. It must be so difficult.
They turn to alcohol, or they turn to,
oh yeah
or you know, food, or some other type of false illusion of temporary comfort that only brings consequences, right? Or distracting themselves through perhaps excessive Netflix sessions, or you know, constantly going out to bars or something, you know, just other not so great temporary distractions, I would say, or self-numbing distractions. Yeah. So
I did a lot of that years ago myself. Like I get it.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's yeah, I think things are more about empowerment now and being able to empower yourself so that instead of the self-soothing and having to kind of numb out or having to, you know, drink to get rid of the negative thoughts, if there's social anxiety or, you know, whatever it is for you, that there are energy techniques that you can use that um just make your life so much happier, you know, more joyful, more happy, richer, more of an adventure, less fearful. Like this is what we all want. And it's
Mhm.
it's where we're going, hopefully.
Yeah, I know, I see it. I do see that we're, like I said, so I'm seeing evidence of it on social media. Like people are talking about narcissistic personality disorder, like
Mm,
all over social media. And so more and more people are becoming educated about it. And I think this is probably why the awareness levels have increased. And this is why people are more speaking out against it. Like, for example, ousting the old show of America's Next Top Model. And that's just one little example amongst many that's been taking place that I've been seeing on social. And so, like I said, I do see people completely still unaware of these covert manipulation tactics being used. I'm seeing it today still. People are completely oblivious to what is happening. And um, so there still needs to be work. There's still, more and more light workers still need to go out there and talk about it, educate, work with a practitioner yourself. Like there still needs to be more work done, right? To make it in terms of a
mhm.
mass collective consciousness. Like we're still not there yet on the collective, but it is happening.
There is the growing awareness, and the awareness is always the first step, isn't it? And when you become aware of the, you know, the dynamics and the tactics, I mean, the narcissist sort of tactics, it's like a checklist. It's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. It just becomes, I mean, I have a lot actually of experience with this, and it's just it's incredible. It's like, wow, like case study, take, you know, check. Um, and once you're actually aware of that, it's so much more empowering, because then you can understand, oh, that's what, because I think people can feel like, oh, it's all, you know, it was all my fault, or they were taught that it was their fault, they were taught that there was something wrong with them, or they were the problem, or, you know, maybe I'll work with somebody that's had an abusive relationship. We've had, you know, relationships with narcissists, like romantic relationships, and then they come out just like, what happened, in the big sense of um how did I let that happen. There can be a lot of shame around the, I was fooled, you know, or I was lied to. There's a lot of feeling, it's so damaging, actually, you know, the person blaming themselves and this kind of thing, feeling like they should have known better, or how could that have happened to them, and it sort of the, you know, the worthlessness thing. So there are definitely ways to kind of rebuild yourself, but for me it's always been about energy psychology and energy healing, because that has the ability to get right into the, you know, the nervous system and the electrics of the traumas and the beliefs and the information, and just, you know, shifting it and healing it from the kind of root. That's I'm very that's why I've been talking for so long. I'm very passionate about it.
No, that's great. I know I'm passionate about this too. So I think two people who are really passionate, knowledgeable about it, we just like we're just like going off and talking and talking. That's been great. And I'm sure everybody's enjoying this conversation. And anybody again who's looking to, release their traumas, release the limiting beliefs, if you want to activate higher levels within yourself, finally get to achieve the goals you want to, I highly encourage you to have a discussion with Jennifer. Go to her website, book a call, send her an email. She knows some stuff. And
yeah, they can go to if they go to my website, and I do 30-minute sessions, complimentary, so that we can just like myself and yourself, we can just have a chat and see if it's going to be beneficial for the person, and if we choose to work together. So yeah, they can contact me and we can get together for half an hour on Zoom and have a little chat.
all right, cool. Kind of like a discovery call. So,
Yeah.
okay, guys, so you heard it. You can talk with Jennifer for free for 30 minutes to do a discovery call with her. And so thank you so much, Jennifer, for being here and contributing so much knowledge and insight and your energy to Happy Being Well's podcast show and to the audience. And so thank you so much. I've enjoyed it, and I'm sure everybody who's listened to this has enjoyed it. So you really poured
You're
to
very welcome.
contribution and being a light worker and contributing to our world. So thanks, Jennifer. Sending lights, love,
Thank you, Rita.
blessings.